Hey guys, bjthebrave here, back with an update of the Warpforge meta snapshot. So, this one is coming at you on the 4th of January, and it includes the drop of the Dark Angels, which is the biggest thing to have impacted the meta since we last spoke a few weeks back. So for anyone new to this, we're going to look at the top 3 tiers. The idea is that everything else is pretty much tier 4. Essentially what we're looking at is the things that you're going to see most often at the top of the meta, the kind of which factions are powerful, which warlords are powerful. And again, this is kind of like my opinion. I do engage with members of the community and try to get as rounded a view as possible. And yeah, so let's dive in, and I'll show you a few deck lists afterwards. Alrighty then. So guys, the first thing I want to say about this meta is it's become quite a binary meta. It's one of those seasons where you want to thank the gods that we have the new ladder system that we have implemented in 2024. If we didn't have the new ladder system, we would just be seeing 1 or 2 decks being played by everybody. There is a difference between having decks that are powerful. Every season will have that. You'll never have perfect balance. You don't want that. But it's a fine line, right? Because obviously, once a deck goes from being powerful and strong to OP and broken, you get these binary metas. And I do think we're in a meta where we have several decks that are in that category. So let's jump on in. Alrighty. Right, first of all, in Tier 3. So Tier 3, for me, what we're looking at is our Mesos. I think Galaron, who's kind of close to Abaddon, probably runs very similar deck to Abaddon, but I still think Abaddon's just a little bit more effective. But that deck does pretty well. Also pretty good at melting big beefy units, which we're seeing a lot of at the minute. I've got Rihanna in there. I think it's the best of the GSC, and my teammate Tagiel still posted the highest score this season, a very respectable 3.6 plus MMR. And of course we got Anvia as well. Now a little bit of a drop for Anvia. Still a good deck. Still, if you've got this deck, got these cards, it can climb well. Will struggle into some of the top tier decks, but it's still a very, very good deck. Alright, so let's take a look. I've got a couple of examples to show you. I'll show you the Amesos and the Sappha one. So Amesos, I'm going to show you, basically this is the deck I pretty much climbed with. I'm like the 4th highest tile player this season. It's a variant of this. Rampager, I only have one normally. I've put a second one in just for the Dark Angels, but to be honest, I think this deck struggles with the Dark Angels and with Sisters, but everything else it can beat. And it's probably better with only one Rampager, to be honest. That's just a kind of tech option. So I'd say more optimally you'd have one Rampager and you'd run a second Pulse Onslaught. But this deck has proven really interesting, actually. I just went back to it on a whim, on the off chance that drones could be good, and turned out to be pretty good. I posted a 3.37k best kind of score with it, and I found it to be actually more effective than Warshaper and Onvar for me. Now, I know other players have had a similar score with Warshaper, so that potentially is on the same kind of level as Mesos. But overall, I think this is quite a fun deck. It's quite challenging as well. Like it's not a brain dead deck. It's not that easy. It's not an easy. I don't know if it's hard. Is it moderate? Moderate to hard, I would say. It's certain, like knowing when to hold off on playing drones, when to play, and all that sort of thing. But yeah, overall, you flood the board and then you use priority target, or you use Storm of Vengeance, which you get off one of your 2 ethereals, to basically burst them down and win the game. Alright, the other deck that we had in the tier 4 was Tagiel's. So this is Tagiel's deck. Like I say, he climbed to the top of the GSC this season with this. There's a couple of other new ideas that I'm playing with, but they're not refined yet. So I'm definitely going to show you this deck as the top tier deck that Tagiel was running. Alrighty. So let's go back to here. So that's tier 3, guys. Let's have a look at tier 2. Now, in tier 2, first up, we got Asmodai. I really like Asmodai as a warlord. I think he's come in at a really good power level. Struggles with... it can struggle with some of the tier 1 decks, but I think Asmodai is in a pretty good place, and I can imagine next season with the right nerfs, Asmodai could be a really good warlord to run with. Brings some really interesting deck design. You can play him with the teleport, you can play him with the Raven Wing, you can play him with the, if you see my Miracle Asmodai deck, my Miracle Quest, a bit like Miracle Rogue from Hearthstone, where you basically lean really heavily into secrets. So there's like quite a few different playstyles with him, and yeah, overall really good warlord and in a pretty good spot in the meta. The reason why he's in tier 2 is if you get the, I don't want to say luck, but if the combos come off for Asmodai, it can beat anything. So it's strong, but obviously it's less consistent, and that's why I've got it in the tier 2. And Swarm Lord, I have to say, personally, I haven't played a lot of Swarm Lord this season. I've heard mixed reports. I know some players who are very near the top of the ladder who have posted some of the high Swarm Lord things, and they've done that in the Dark Angel meta and been fine with it. I know other players who have said they found it a real struggle. So I don't know from personal experience, but from based on what everyone else is telling me, it seems that Swarm Lord is around tier 2 at the minute still. And similar with Gordrang, I feel like Gordrang has got weakened a little bit, but that said, people are leaning more into aggro builds with Gordrang. It's not my style of Orc play. I used to pride myself as an Orc player. Still, the most wins I've got with any Warlord is Ghazghkull. But I don't feel like I'm on this new era of Orc players where they're basically playing Gordrang as a sort of really sort of fast aggro players. It's not my style of Orc play. So I'm not very good with it, but players are posting some pretty respectable scores outside of the tier 1 decks. It's one of the higher scored warlords, and yeah, it can definitely catch people out and sneak wins. So what Gordrang is in tier 2. Now Abaddon is pretty good because with Abaddon, I'm going to show you an Abaddon deck list in a moment, but it's probably one of the better prey decks, I would say. Very good into sisters, like can punish go wide decks, can punish Mesos, can punish Junith, you know, these sort of go wide boards, Imperial Guard, with big burst combos basically. But you have to know what you're doing with Abaddon because it is a combo deck, but it's you know, he's got the health, he's got the body, he's got the draw, got really good. The 3E card draw in Abaddon's a really good draw card. Plays in and synergizes nice. It's probably the best 3E draw card in the game, and that bodes well for a combo deck. And I think right now Abaddon's not a bad prey deck. However, it does struggle with the next one we're going to talk about, which is Jain Zar. Jain Zar is a really interesting place in the meta because Jain Zar is the stun warlord, and stun means that it can stop your enemy warlord from preying. It means you can stop Azrael from using its agenda ability. So it is an annoying warlord to play against. However, it does tend to the troops in the deck are quite weak. They're not particularly big or beefy or powerful, so they may not be able to stand up to this slightly beefier meta that like Azrael brings, for example. So the win rate with Jain Zar will be very much like you'll win one, then you'll lose one, you'll win a few, then you'll lose one. So it's I think you struggle to get that kind of like 80+% win rate that you kind of need in the tier 1 decks. But it's still pretty well placed outside of those tier 1. You know, you can stun Swarmlord, you can stun Gordrang, stop swinging, you can stun Abaddon, stop combos going off. So it's in a really decent spot. This is why I've got it like at the top of tier 2. Okay, so let's look at a few examples then. So with Asmodai, I have a whole guide on my Miracle deck. There's a version of it. I've got several versions of the Miracle deck, but this is the one I kind of want to run next season. This is a more Ravenwing themed deck. You can run. I've put an extra champion in here, but you could drop one of those and put a second repulsor in if you want more top end. So I think this is going to be a really nice deck. I was chatting to Barrick. He actually runs 2 of the 4-drop Terminators, just the only teleport ones he runs, because they're pretty good if they don't teleport, but obviously if they do, that adds something to the deck as well. But yeah, I think this is a pretty good Asmodai deck, and like I say, it has potential to get secrets and then obviously go off and beat pretty much anything. Swarmlord, this is a really good deck that sort of has a kind of pretty good hybrid of like stealth and non-stealth in like the can effects and stuff. I've seen players go back down the more traditional route where they're bringing in things like the Zoanthropes again and the Hive Guard of. So I've always thought that with Swarmlord, there are those two ways of playing it. Do you want a more board building version? This is the slightly more aggro version that leans a bit more heavily into stealth. So I think this is still predominantly the more powerful version, but like I say, I've not personally run loads of Swarmlord. This is just what I've got from other top players, so check that one out. Jane Zar, this is what the Jane Zar deck looks like. I would say I'm playing around a little bit here. I've made the top end of the curve a bit bigger, put some fire prisms in for some anti-armor. Probably the deck that climbed the highest is a slightly lower curve. Might not have run those. Might put the extra guardian in or whatnot. But ultimately, most 90% of that deck is as it is, and you could swap this out for a Hemlock if you wanted. But there's really, outside of those sort of 3 to 4 cards like the Hornets and the Prisms, the deck's pretty locked in. Really strong deck. What else did we say was at tier 2? Oh, the Abaddon. So this is a deck that was on... this is Stelmar. He ran an Abaddon deck this season, did really well with it, and I think it was showcased on the Ecclesiacs livestream the other day as well. Stelmar was in the chat and they were talking about it, and Ecclesiac piloted this and did really well. It went on quite a big win streak with it. Looks really solid to me, to be honest. This is kind of pretty much what I would run in this meta. The reason being for it is the main shell's the same, but what you're doing here is, because you've got the double demonic frenzy, you're able to and the, where's it gone, Skeins of Fate. What you're able to do is get combos off from other places, not just Abaddon. So the Venom Crawler could combo off, the Warp Talon could combo off. So there's you can hit combos from multiple different angles, from troops and from Abaddon. Abaddon's still there with Dracneum, especially if he's not playing stun. But if you are playing stun units and stuff like, it's got other options. So I think this is a more flexible combo deck. Probably not the easiest deck to pilot, but should be really fun. Potentially I might run this next season, we'll see. But I really like this deck from Stelmar, so well done to him. And yeah, if you want to play Chaos, there's not a ton of variety, but I think this is a really powerful deck to be going with at the minute. Alrighty. So let's talk about tier 1. When it comes to tier 1, guys, it's pretty clear to me that Junith and Azrael are bonkers. They are the two decks that I feel are broken. They are OP, and I hope we get a really well-considered balance patch in January, because if not, it's going to be a really rough month. But if we get the balance patch that I'm hoping, it will address these two decks, particularly Junith and Azrael, and in addressing Junith, it will address Erika as well. Basically, Erika and Junith share the best card pool. I think the Sisters card pool has got so many broken cards at this stage that it's just bonkers. I think Junith versus Erika, Junith is favourite. She just outvalues Erika. She doesn't need to play under par 3 drops and 2 drops because she can just use her Warlord power. So she can sort of outvalue Erika, but they're still both got access to the best card pool, so they're both tier 1. I would have Junith slightly above, hence the S tier thing, but those two are super strong. And also Erika's got, again, because she's got access to stun, she can just be horrible for Gordrang and Abaddon and Swarmlord. You know, she can just stop all of that kind of enemy Warlord stuff. Not to mention enemy Azraels and Juniths, like from praying and from gendering. So stun is very powerful. Obviously you have got to get to the 6, and she's got an slightly less effective power until she does. Now Azrael is the new kid on the block, and Azrael is just an super consistent. That's the reason that Azrael is the top tier deck. The teleport mechanic is very fair with the other warlords, right? Because it's gonna go wrong. It's not going to be a consistent mechanic. It will be powerful when you get a teleport on curve, but when you miss it and it's just in your hand, it's going to be a slight, you're going to have slightly underwhelming cards. But in Azrael, with his Warlord ability, his agenda, which is allows him to basically choose a card at the top of his deck every time. He can just keep putting those teleports to the top, and it gives you great flexibility. It feels really good being able to kind of control that. I always loved Oricon's ability, but you know, at this point, talk about power creep. Oricon has to pay 1 energy for this guy's ability. He gets this for free, and then he's got another power he can do for 2 energy. He's super strong. It's not a tempo. It's not a tempo ability. If you look at his Warlord power from that angle, you'd be disappointed. But that's not what it needs to do. If you can build the deck correctly around Azrael, and I'll show you my deck in a minute. This deck is like really powerful, and it can beat Junith. It can lose to Junith, but it can beat Junith as well if you play it well. So it's extremely strong, and that's why I've got it up there in S tier. And it's beyond strong, to be honest. I think it needs some nerfs. It needs a little bit of touching. Otherwise, we'll be seeing some massive scores posted with Azrael next season as people get the full Dark Angel collection. And last but not least, we've got Junith. What else is there to say about Junith? Junith is still S tier. She still has a broken Warlord power. You know, at 6 energy, being able to put out... Sorry, not 6 energy, 6 faith. Being able to put out what she puts out is just insane. Right, let's quickly look at some of the decks, and then we're going to wrap up and get out of here. So this is the Erika deck that I've got in there. You can see we are having to put in things like 3-drops units in there, like the Death Cult Assassins or whatnot. Whereas the Junith deck, you don't need to do any of that. So this is the Junith deck. It's probably being shared to death right now. If you've got the level 40 on Forge, this deck is just absolutely a beast. I would say that having that level 40 Forge does take this to the next level, so there you go. And then the other one that we said we'd share is the Azrael Teleport. This is the deck I've been using. I've refined it quite well. I know some people play the 7E Terminator. I don't personally like it. You could drop Ezekiel and play 1 if you want, but that is the deck. I think it's super important to have the early units that we've got. Playing things like Reliquary on Lazarius on like turn 5 is just game winning for the 8 health. So yeah, that is the deck. Like I say, it's not the most varied meta. It's quite binary. Hopefully we get a few changes in the balance patch, and looking forward to a new season in January 2025. Hit that thumbs up and subscribe, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Take it easy.